Hello, and this is the second video with Juliia Savenko, and she's talking today about assessment in ELT. Juliia, please.
Okay, so we'll start talking about assessment, and wait a second, I think, here. So assessment, why it's important. Some teachers struggle with assessment and they don't know how to assess their learners, not because we have to demotivate our learners by assessing them. So plan, today we are going to cover definitions and problems of assessment, approaches, forms of assessment, types of criteria, and authentic assessment. So assessment is a process in which you make a judgment about a person or situation or measurement of personal abilities or process. Assessment has an important role in education. It has a critical role in teaching process. We know about it. It's so important, and our learners sometimes want to be assessed to see their progress. But there are some problems of assessment. When should assessment take place? It should be continuous progress throughout the course at regular intervals, each time providing feedback. There are three main types of assessment. Assessment for learning, it enables teachers to use information about students' knowledge, understanding, and teacher provide feedback to students about their learning and how to improve. Assessment as learning involves students in the learning process where they monitor their own progress and ask questions and practice different skills. And assessment of learning is assist teachers to use evidence of students' learning to assess students' achievement against learning goals and standards. So who should assess? Teacher can assess learners or students. It's about self-assessment or peer assessment. And how should assessment be done? Constructively, reliably, openly, validly, giving accurate results, and economically. There are different kinds of assessment. There are many of them, but I will cover a few of them only. Formal, informal, and self-assessment. So, formal assessment, what are the advantages of formal assessment? It allows teachers to compare the progress and performance, and easy to develop and score, usually test, true, false, and so on. But there are also disadvantages. It doesn't capture the depth of students' knowledge, and questions are usually surface and do not allow students to elaborate on certain topics. So formal assessment is an official procedure done under conditions necessary for individual to perform a certain skills. It's our tests, what our learners do, and so many factors can affect the results. So test, the procedure of examining knowledge or ability of our learners. There are main principles of testing. They are validity, reliability, and practicality. Kinds of tests. Proficiency test, it's a global test like IELTS, a global competence in language achievement. To determine the goal of it is to understand whether the course objectives have been met. Today, diagnostic is to diagnose specific aspects of language, like reading, writing, and placement to understand the level of your learners. And testing techniques, multiple choice, true, false, yes, no, so different types of activities. So informal assessment, that was formal assessment with tests and true, false exercises, and now it's informal assessment, system of observation and collection of data about students' performance under normal classroom conditions. So it's not about tests, it's about quizzes, projects where they can present their ideas, their portfolios, observations, and oral presentations. There are strengths and weaknesses also in this type of assessment, and the strengths are that you can do, it's like you don't need lots of planning and expense. It is less stressful for our learners because they do not worry about their grades, and you can receive immediate data about your learners' progress, and it's the most accurate measure of students' true ability. But there are also weaknesses. It's about hidden prejudices of or stereotypes of bias of teachers. And sometimes motivations, extrinsic motivation in this case of our learners can be not strong enough, because when they do tests, they are more motivated to achieve more results. When they don't know that they are observed or assessed, they are not so motivated. But that's why we need to understand our learners to meet their needs and to assess them properly. So there are linguistic and non-linguistic factors. Linguistic factors are like grammar, individual work, classroom language, communicative activities, and communication. And non-linguistic, it's like their attitude, their skill, their cognitive skills, and their efforts, their desire to cooperate, their presentation skills. For example, there are following instruments of informal assessment: behavior in the classroom. So you can have such chart where you can write some notes and assess their behavior. And or instruments for formal assessment of their skills. Writing skills, for example, in this case, or listening skills in this case. Then the next kind of assessment is self-assessment, which also has advantages and disadvantages. Self-assessment is management by students themselves, their own performance and progress in learning. And the main advantages is that they can reflect on their progress and performance. They feel more responsibility. They develop their judgmental skills. They don't feel peer pressure, so it's not stressful. They become more autonomous learners, and they are aware they become aware of their weakness and strengths. But also it can be subjective sometimes and time-consuming for students, since they don't know how to do it. And if students are not familiar with criteria, it can be wrong for sure. So self-assessment techniques can be description, rating, monitoring, questionnaires, surveys. So they can also use this kind of charts to assess their progress. It's about criteria. So when you discuss criteria with your learners, they understand how they can assess themselves. So criteria of assessment, it is description of what students should be able to do with their language. And there are different types of criteria. Holistic, it's evaluation of language skills, not separated, but as a whole, where levels are bands of multi-activity scale. And analytical, it's more detailed. Evaluation by means of assessing different parts of the performance. So here is a sample of holistic assessment. and 2 more samples of analytical assessment. And our last part in this presentation is dedicated to authentic assessment in English language teaching. It's an approach to assessment that has been designed to provide a realistic task simulation or problem related to that attribute of performance which is measured. So it's something authentic that happens during the lesson, and it also has its pros and cons. And there are following kinds of authentic assessment: performance-based assessment, and portfolios and process folios, journals, real-life assessment, class contracts. And performance-based assessment is a part of authentic assessment. It can be open-ended, complex, authentic, require presentation of worthwhile tasks in the academic field, make students present their work publicly, and emphasize a high level of thinking. So portfolios also help students to assess their progress and help teachers to see their progress and to assess it as well. And they usually include work samples, checklists, photographs, videos, interview, audio tapes, attitudes, and some notes and process folio selections. They can look like this. So benefits of authentic or alternative assessment, the one which I've been telling about, enable students to think about their personal learning process. So it develops responsibility, so they can see it, and self-organizational skills, presentation, and work with the communication skills. Motivates to aim achievement and makes students to set new goals in education. We as teachers can think at which stage of the lesson we can use different types of assessments, but we need to keep in our head that authentic assessment is more natural for our learners, and it's usually done during the whole lesson. Thank you for your attention. I can hear you, Marina.
So yeah, thank you so much for this presentation, and we'll see you in next lesson as well.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.